Welcome to Energy Over Matter, where we explore energy medicine, nervous system regulation, and mind body healing. I'm Dana Wilder. What if one of the most powerful healing modalities available to you is something you're already doing thousands of times a day? It's free, it's easy, and accessible right now. You might just not be doing it optimally. Today in this video, we are going to be exploring breath and how breath is a powerful tool into all layers of our healing and is accessible to anybody all of the time. So welcome everybody to Mind Over MS. This is the first part of a series that we're doing. And this series is taking us across all the layers of healing. And so the overall framework for this was introduced in the last video, but anybody who missed it, just to give a recap, this is taking us across the 5 koshas as outlined in yoga. And koshas are concentric layers of our being. They're parts of us that are required to be activated, aligned, and tuned in order to heal. They start with the gross body, or the most dense, the physical body. Then we move inwards to the energy body and get more and more subtle as we go to the mental body, to our wisdom body, and finally to the bliss body, or the innermost part of ourselves, that higher part of us, or maybe what some would call spirit. And this journey of exploration in this series is going to be taking us through each one of these layers. We're starting today in the physical body. And again, I just want to reiterate that this is not the most primary, it is not the most important, but it is foundational in the sense that if on the other end we get our purpose, our identity, or our happiness wrong, we might live a life that is under its potential, maybe low level anxiety, but we'll still survive it. If we get the physical body incorrect, it can lead to dis-ease or ultimately to death. And the entryway into this then is the breath. And why this is such a perfect place to start is because the breath is not only going to be something that we do with our physical body, but the breath is actually something that takes us into every one of these layers because it is so foundational and so primary. And we can understand this when we think about that, on average, they say you can go 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water, but how long can you go without oxygen? I've lived this firsthand. My firstborn son died of ataxia, or uh, oxygen insufficiency to the brain through birthing process. That was difficult. And it was under 5 minutes of no oxygen to the brain, and it led to his death. And so it is foundational. It is primary. It is something that we take a breath the first time as an infant when our cord is cut, we scream. And when we come out on the other end, we take that last exhale as life leaves us. So breath is foundational. So we are going to talk about it today in the physical body, but we're not going to stay there because as this entire series and this channel suggests, nothing is in isolation. We are holistic beings, we are multidimensional, and it is multifactorial in the way that we're going to heal. So even when we look at the breath today, we're not just going to stop with the physical body. We are going to see how it manifests and expresses itself and also gets out of alignment and back into alignment in each one of these layers as we jump in. So starting then with the physical body, let's just think about this now, not energetically and not spiritually, but just really as a functional and mechanical process in the body. So we require oxygen to live. So when we breathe in, we're taking in oxygen, and this is our primary fuel source. So they say, at least in Western medicine, about 90% of our energy is coming through oxygen. So we bring oxygen in through our lungs bring it into our circulation, our heart pumps it around. And as it's doing that, it goes through all these wonderful transformations. We take the oxygen in and we expel CO2 out, and that waste product through methylation and all of the processes then goes back into the environment and then beautifully is reuptaked by the trees and nature because we live symbiotically. And we're not just a holistic within our being, but with the world and the cosmos, because it is this dance of energy exchange. If we don't have energy, we die. and breath is a primary source of energy. So we need this to function. And I'm not going to get too technical with all of these things because otherwise this video will end up hours long. But just to let you know, in the physical body, we use oxygen. Our mitochondria uses it to create ATP, adenosine phosphate Adenophosphate I can never say the whole thing, but you could look it up. It doesn't matter. ATP anyway, and our mitochondria we learn in high school biology is the powerhouse of the cells. It's what gives us energy. So these are little bacteria in our body that have evolved alongside of us. We have a symbiotic relationship to them, and that gives us this energy production. And that's what our muscles are going to use to move. And that is what our nerves are going to use to fire. This is all of the process of digestion, of beating of our heart. All of the things that are happening in our body are going to be fueled by this energy. And anyone that has MS or any other disease can understand how fatigue becomes one of the most debilitating symptoms. And that was surprising for me because my whole life I was an energizer bunny. I always had just this nonstop battery, go, go, go. And when this major relapse happened to me 5 years ago, where I lost function in my hands, my trunk, my legs, my eyesight, my bowel, my bladder, my temperature regulation, like pretty much all systems down. What was so upsetting about it was this lack of energy. I couldn't even, even as I got better, the idea of even trying to sweep the floor, I would have to just in one room take 3 breaks. I would stand up, I could sweep a little bit, and I would have to sit down and have 20-minute rest. And even now, while I feel a lot of the way recovered, and I keep getting more and more in my healing journey, I still don't have the energy that I used to have. So yes, can I take the dog for a walk or a short hike? Yes, I can do that. But I can't run a marathon anymore, and I can't hike for an hour anymore. I do need to have still more breaks than I used to have. And this is because there's all of these things that have gone wrong in the physical body and all the way up through. But we're starting here in the physical. So there is something that's out of alignment. So there's a lot of things we can do, though, in the physical body to fuel ourselves. So, just to give a little bit of an overview of ideal breathing, because I think that most of us have no idea actually how to properly breathe. And as a yoga teacher, I find it surprising how many students come and they don't even understand what a proper breath is. And I think when you look at a baby breathing and they look so peaceful in their sleep and you see their stomach have that, very gentle undulation, that they look so peaceful, they knew how to breathe. But over a lifetime of trauma and illness and fear and emotional patterning, we forgot how to breathe. And it's sometimes we get so complex in things and we move so many steps ahead, but we don't get the basics right. So when we want to breathe, we have a diaphragm, and the diaphragm is separating the lower organs and the upper ones, and it attaches through our intercostal muscles of our rib cage, and it is a muscle. And when it's resting, it is like a dome shape. And as we breathe, what we're really doing, we're not even really taking a breath in. We're contracting those muscles and they're pushing down. And as it pushes down, it sucks air in from outside. So you're actually not even really taking a breath in. It is this muscle movement that sucks a breath in. You take that breath in, and as you exhale, that's where the effort actually is. You're exhaling, and that's pushing the air back out as the muscle moves up. Now, this is important for so many reasons. Just at never mind energy and spirituality now, let's look at it just mechanically still. So every time that diaphragm pushes down, it massages all the lower digestive organs. So your liver, your pancreas, the large and small intestines, the bowels, colon, everything. This is what gives circulation to the lymph system. Our lymph system, unlike muscles, it doesn't have a heart that can pump. So the lymph has to be moved by exercise and movement. A lot of us that are ill, I understand movement can be hard, but we still can breathe. Now, I know MS, those that suffer with that, MS hug is a real thing. And why that came with the last relapse I had too. And it really is very difficult when all that is contracting. But we need to still figure out a way, even if it's only small improvements, to how to relax that and how to try to expand the breath over time. So when we do this, not only is it like a massage and a movement that's going to move everything around, it's also like the furnace for your body. So it is like a pump that is like pumping the blood, pumping the oxygen, and it's moving it to the distal parts of your body. So really thinking about our feet, and I know a lot of us with MS or other neurological or diabetes even, neuropathy and coldness in the feet is a real issue. And even just feeling energized down there, it's one of the places a lot of people in the hands and the feet is where numbness strikes. So when we are breathing properly, we are now sending the energy from our internal core, from our solar plexus, from the furnace, the internal part of us, our heart center. We're sending it further out into the body. And we do that energetically, but we also want to do it at the very mechanical and biochemistry level where we're sending oxygen out. So one of the other things when we're thinking about it really just in the mechanics right now is how much of us are habitual overbreathers. So I would say outside of this video, take notice of how many breaths you're having in 1 minute. A lot of people are having upwards of 10 to 20 breaths in a minute, which is way too many breaths. So we really ideally should be having 4 to 6 breaths in full cycles in 1 minute, which means you're having very slow inhalation. You pause a little bit in between inhalation and exhalation, and even longer exhale than an inhale. And it should be rhythmic. And there's a couple ways that you can. So, first of all, just being conscious of that maybe throughout the day, starting in the morning, maybe perhaps gauging when in the day your breathing patterns change, because those might be places you want to implement some of these strategies. But you start with just that baseline of knowledge that where is my breath count right now? And you're going to use that kind of as a gauge over time to know, are you making any improvements in how you're breathing? Another good way to do it, and this is again, this is not a breath hold for maximal hold. So we're not trying to think right now of like, oh, I'm going to hold my, like when we we're little kids and we're all trying to have a contest under the water in the pool who could hold their breath the longest. This is not that. This is just like an indication of when you feel the natural urge for the first time to have a breath. So you would want to do this practice at a time like maybe when you first wake up in the morning before you've moved around. You don't want to do it after you've been talking a lot or walking or anything that's going to increase your heart rate and your breathing pattern. And in this case, then you would just be gently exhaling and then just holding it. And you're just going to hold it until you get that first feeling of, I need to take a breath in. And a good way to gauge that is sometimes you'll swallow or have a little like flexion somewhere in your throat, swallowing. Like there's something that you'll just all of a sudden feel. There's this little movement where your body says, yep, time to take a breath. Now, this is something again that you want to get up so that you're holding your breath, that breath hold is longer than 20 seconds. And for a lot of us, we're nowhere near that because we are habitual overbreathers. So over time, there's lots of tools that you can train for this. Now, again, because I'm just talking about breath here as an introductory video, I'm going to go back, and as the podcast develops, I'll come back and I'll dial in on some of these things and really flesh out the techniques and the tools. Again, this is just right now an introduction to breath and how important it is in the body. So this is where we're getting our energy. It's where our mitochondria is converting things to ATP. And I just want you to think then again at a very fundamental level how important oxygen is. So I gave the example of, the worst outcome, which is what happened to my son from being hypoxic for too long. But even what happens when somebody has aneurysms or a stroke or a heart attack, or when we are just oxygen deprived in any parts of our body. So, cancer feeds on areas that are oxygen deprived. So there's all of these ways in which, and even when we start to look at things like just like obesity in general, which is an epidemic, at least in North America, and I would imagine in other places in the world that follow the standard American kind of diet. The more weight you put on your body, the more blood cells and capillaries have to form to feed the fat stores, which means that your heart is being asked to do way more effort. So, all of these things about just getting healthy, and this whole series we're going to do is going to work on diet and movement and all of these things, because working your physical body is still foundational, even though this is a channel about energy medicine, because you can't separate them. The body is the vessel in which we're living in. So when we do any kind of starting to elongate the breath or being able to hold our breath for longer, we're always thinking about this in terms of everybody feels like it's because you're oxygen deprived that you need to take a deeper breath. But most of us are very oxygen saturated. So even if we dropped 1% in that, we were still so full of oxygen in our system. It's not from lack of oxygen that makes us feel that need to have a breath. It is oversensitized CO2 receptors. So when we habitually overbreathe, we get more receptors for CO2 in the brain, which means small increases in CO2 is going to cause the brain to feel like panicked, like it needs to gulp for another breath. So as we slowly start to train ourselves to take less breath and to take more shallow breath as well, because when we say take a deep breath, and I do it in yoga, and I have to always try to remind myself, just for semantics, it's easy to say take a deep breath, but really you don't want to take a bigger breath. You want to take a slow, deep belly breath where that diaphragm is moving and you're moving the oxygen down into your lower lungs. It's not about taking bigger, more breaths. It's about taking more intentional, mechanically accurate types of breaths. And you want to reduce that CO2 sensitivity. So one really beautiful pattern, and I just want to share this, but again, this is a more advanced breathing pattern. So I don't expect that anyone here is going to pick this up right away. I'll do another video on it. But just to let you know, hypoxic breathing is really beautiful. So this is anyone that's familiar with Wim Hof. And if you want to explore this more now before I release a video on it, YouTube is full of Wim Hof breathing techniques. It's the idea that you take a huge breath in and then a breath out, in, out, and you're over breathing. And I know I just said not to, but this is intentional because it's training. So you take the breath in, you oxygenate fully, and then as you say after maybe 30 breaths like this, and while you're doing that, you might feel like tingling in your lips or your feet because it's bringing this new sensation into the body you're not used to. As you take that exhale, you hold your breath, and that breath hold is going to be in the beginning around 1 minute. I've gotten up to 5 minutes before very comfortably. And it's actually so peaceful not to breathe. To lay there and to not breathe and to be completely still is such a beautiful meditative practice. And it's also what is called a hormetic stressor. So we don't want to live in chronic stress when it's coming like from a source that never stops, like financial things or a job you hate or traffic or something that's like it never stops. But when you do like intermittent periods of stress that are beneficial, like stressing the body in this sense because you're holding your breath for so long, that actually trains your body to become more resilient. Same like a cold shower does. And I guess the easiest example is when you go to train at a gym and you tear your muscles, but as you recover the next day, they get stronger as they rebuild. So this type of hypoxic breathing, it does the same thing, but what it's doing is reducing your CO2 sensitivity. And that's what we were just talking about, that for that breath hold that we're doing, that this is how we're going to eventually elongate it, is because we're going to have less CO2 sensors and less sensitive ones in our brain, and we won't feel the need to constantly take another breath. So lots of disease are linked to this, and anyone that is here with MS, and I'm sure that's most of you, quite a few years ago, I would want to say 10 years maybe, a doctor in Italy was talking about CCSVI, and I want to call it cerebro something insufficiency, a venous insufficiency. It was this idea that there's like the arteries and the veins that are going from the neck into the brain are pinched off and they're not wide enough to allow blood and oxygen. So I did test myself I'm in Canada and I drove into the US because our free healthcare system doesn't cover much. And I got tested for it and I did have that insufficiency in my veins. And I had thought about going out overseas to get the surgery, but at the time it was like 25K and I was pretty young. I didn't have the money. And, there has been such a smear job on that and so much fear about that it damaged people or things didn't work out good. All you can really find is anecdotal evidence online. I know that the powers that be definitely want to squash these things. So I don't necessarily believe all the smear jobs of things that were done. But I wish that they were still studying this and they were still putting research into it. But where I land with this now is that whether you have that insufficiency and it caused the MS, or whether the MS inflammation causes that, which is what the medical system is saying, is that yes, you might have this insufficiency, but when you put a stent in and you do surgery, which has its own risks and danger, it's going to collapse and eventually not work because you didn't solve the problem, which was the inflammation. And so this was a secondary thing that happened, it wasn't the cause. And I tend to actually land on that as a place too. So when I think that I am about a root cause and I am about avoiding surgery or undue risk, doing this type of breathing practice is definitely going to help you open these arteries and these veins. So even without surgery, these types of things we're talking about today are still at a very physical, mechanical systems level going to help open all of this and help get the brain oxygenated and energized. So now moving away from just at a physical level now, because we're talking about the koshas today as a healing frame, let's think about our energy body. Okay, the energy body is called pranamaya kosha. And prana in Sanskrit means breath, right? So pranamaya, meaning now that the breath body, and breath is like it is prana, it is energy. You can't really separate the two. So when we think about our energy body, we are thinking about our breath, because what animates us, what gives us all of this energy that goes throughout our body is prana. So, we need to do these types of practices, and there are so many of them. And you can even go on my channel and look at some of my meditation videos and some of my other content on here, and you'll get some of these breath practices. Later in this episode, we're going to implement one together so that you have something to take away with you today. But prana is more than just even your breath. It is like what vitalizes you, right? It is what animates your body. Like I said earlier, it's the first thing that we do when we're born and the last thing we do when we die. So it is what is the energy and the whole system in our body. And when we have energy leaks and when we have low energy, getting our breathing right is going to be one of the quickest and fastest ways to turn around energy depletion. So we're going to learn how to do this diaphragmatic breath. We're going to check in with ourselves multiple times throughout the day to see how many breaths am I taking? What does the breath, what does the quality of it feel like? How can I slow it down? How can I be more mindful and intentional about the breath? So it's not just even in yoga philosophy, which is what I'm studied in, that we talk about prana. In traditional Chinese medicine, they call it qi. And qi is the same idea. It is this vital energy that animates the body. And in Chinese medicine, they talk about meridian systems. So we move the energy through these meridian systems. And the meridian system, like we don't have something in Western philosophy that really covers it. And they don't even really believe it necessarily, because they've had a very difficult time so far mapping or finding the organ that's responsible for this. But yet we know it's true. Like I've experienced it myself, and there's been so many smaller kinds of studies done that prove this. There's just not a lot of money to be put into proving these things, because you can't patent it, you can't make money off of it, and so nobody really studies them. But you experience them, you embody them, you feel them. And if anyone's had acupuncture done ever, how beneficial it can be to move so many things in the body, which then gives this belief that even if we can't see it, it's true and it's there. And so in yoga, though, we don't use meridians, we use chakra system and then the nadis. And the nadis are like the same thing. They're like little pathways that move energy throughout the body. I think the most parallel thing that we would think about within Western science would be just our nervous system. And the nervous system, again, you cannot separate from breath. So I think I'll use that as the bridge now, moving from just doing in the energy body, we want to do a lot of pranamaya kosha or breath work. So we're doing intentional breathing patterns. We're doing slowing down of the breath and just being aware of it, because that's going to help regulate the energy. When we get into our mental body, which is the next layer in the koshas, this is really where the nervous system really starts to come into play. So in our nervous system, and those of us with MS are probably more familiar with than the general public, because we have a disease that manifests in our nervous system. But for those that aren't familiar, the nervous system is made up primarily of your spine and then your brain. That's the anatomical structures of it. You also have an enteric nervous system, which is in the body and the organs. And the vagus nerve comes from your brain stem and it connects into that enteric nervous system. That's going to be more responsible for things that are autonomic. So things that are kind of outside of our control, which is like our heart rate, our digestion, our body temperature. And that is going to move into the peripheral nervous system, which is the nerves that are kind of in the muscles and in the organs of the body. And so we can get disrupted, and these things can breakdown, obviously, which is what's happening in MS. The myelin sheaths are getting damaged, and so it becomes very difficult for the communication to flow optimally. So when we have, and this is where the mental part is going to start to bridge into the nervous system, when we have a lot of anxiety that arises all of the time, or we have trauma patterns, or we have a fear response, it reprograms our breathing. So when I was talking earlier about when we're a baby and we have that beautiful breathing pattern and we develop over time a negative breathing pattern, even just think about how that can be starting in a physical body. So say somebody jumps out and they scare you, you go, and you gasp and you take in a breath, or something terrifying happens and you're, like right before the roller coaster or something scary in a movie, and you're kind of gripping there and your body's tense and you're not breathing at all. You're doing a breath hold now. Or when you have a lot of tension and you have a lot of anxiety and it starts to come into your neck and you start to breathe only in the upper part of your body. Now, what happens when you breathe not diaphragmatically, but when you breathe in your chest, it's not optimally how we're supposed to breathe. So when we're breathing here, because we have these signals from the body of stress that are saying, oh, something, I'm ill. So when we're ill, we tend to get this too. Or when we're in pain is another time too. So when you have pain in the body, it is very difficult to take a full breath because pain is a signal that's telling you to kind of like grip and hold. And that's not flow. That's not open. That's not easy breathing. Right. And so some of those things we have to remove if we can, to get rid of the pain, to get rid of the anxiety, to get rid of these thought loops. Right. And we can do that through breath again. But just to paint the picture from the physical going up, we have all these things that like illness, pain, fear, anxiety that come up through the body. And when we're breathing through our chest, then it is very inefficient. But even worse than our chest breathing is going to be when we breathe through our neck and our shoulders. Now, I want you to pay attention now that I've mentioned this to you through the video. And as you're watching me breathe, notice how I take these little quick breaths like this. This is because I'm talking. And as I'm talking, and I have to keep getting breath, much like dancers do, salespeople, teachers, they have to take these little quick breaths in between to try to get some oxygen in. So people that tend to have these types of jobs where they speak a lot, again, they have very inefficient breathing patterns on top of the people that are just suffering with anxiety. When you breathe here like this requires so much energy to move these muscles. For the little breath you're only getting, it's actually an energy expenditure instead of a benefit. So you are letting out more energy than this oxygen is letting back in, which is, even though I do these videos and I teach yoga classes, I do so much intentional breathing and I meditate and I do chanting. I do so many things throughout the day. I regain the energy I lose doing this. Plus, I find it beneficial that I share this with you so that if you don't know these things at home, that you're going to take this into your practice. But just to know that this breathing up pattern I'm doing right now is inefficient, and you should pay attention for yourself throughout the day to notice when you breathe through your chest. And a good way to do that is when you're lying down, putting a hand on your heart and or your chest and one on your belly. And as you're breathing, to really notice what hand is raising. Are they both? Is it my chest? And try to see if you can get the breath to only go into the belly and move that hand, and try to keep the one that on your heart still. And once you have that kind of pattern where you're breathing into your belly, another beautiful way to visualize, because I think visualization in our mind are very strong, is to see your lower ribs as like gills, like a fish. And like when you see the fish, their gills open when they take a breath. To try to see that your side body is like that. And so the breath is no longer in the top of your chest, it's in the belly, and it's that diaphragm at the bottom, and it's opening at the bottom as it lets a breath in. So I'm talking about all the ways in which physical body can send a message up to the brain to overbreathe, right? To habitually hold inefficient breath patterns, all of these things. But this is a two-way street. And I know I just said to you that most of the things in the enteric or the lower nervous system is autonomic, so meaning we don't control it. I'm going to suggest, and yoga teaches us, that we have way more control over it than they will lead us to believe or we're told in science. So when we think about in our mind what can cause stress, so we might not be in the traffic anymore, or in the fight or anymore, or even struggling, say with you, you're struggling to walk. And I know it is anxiety, right? If you fall down a lot and you're always nervous when you're about to get up or do something, or even you're carrying hot water and you have bad balance and you have this anxiety loop, am I going to spill it? Like, I understand that there's all these thoughts that come into our mind, but we try to only have it one time and let it go, because if we're constantly looping back in and we're reminding ourselves, or we're going back to the trauma, or back to our childhood, or back to the fight we already had with our spouse. And this is why they always say the power to be now, because when we're always going either in the future to worry or going in the past and we live in fear, that now sends a message into the body saying, yep, we're anxious. So we should go back to the biochemistry of anxiousness. So whenever we have thoughts, those thoughts become feelings. The feelings turn into chemistry in the body, which trigger things like this quick breathing and shallow breathing. But the beautiful thing about it is this two-way symphony that we conduct through our breath. As much as we feel like it's out of our control, there's so much in our control. So when we start to feel the anxiety loops coming, we can mindfully, and this is where we get into the mental body and even into the wisdom body, is starting to become very aware, to be very mindful of what our breath is like, what our thoughts, the quality of them, what the emotions feel like in our body, what the pain is trying to say to us. Because as we become more literate in these things, which we gain through awareness, then we have the ability to modify them more quickly. So if you start to have this rumination about something that happened yesterday, and you think, oh, why didn't I say that? I should have said this, or why don't I stand up for myself, or whatever that situation is, you start playing. If you become aware of it, stop, notice how you feel. What emotion? Where is it tight? What is your breathing pattern look like? What are you feeling? And then just allow it to move through you and let go. Allow your breath to deepen, allow yourself to quiet, and allow those little spaces, even between the inhale and the exhale, to be little moments of grace, little moments of compassion, of love, of listening. All of these things that lead us from our mental body into our wisdom body, because our wisdom body and these higher layers of concentric layers of ourselves, they're very subtle. They're not like the physical body. They're not like these other things that speak very loudly. They're so subtle that we need to make space to listen to them. And we do that through awareness, through these practices like slowing down and breathing. And that's going to calm the entire nervous system. So when we calm our nervous system, what does that do in response? It lowers our heart rate. It puts our parasympathetic system back in, which is rest and digest. So our digestion is going to improve. That's when we build our immune system. This is when we do cellular repair. Because when you're in the sympathetic system, so you're anxious, you're under stress, you're in anxiety, you're in a task you're trying to accomplish, your boss is yelling at you, the phone is ringing, dinner's cooking, the dog's barking at the door. All of those things are putting you into fight or flight, which is okay short term because we need stress to motivate us to do actions. And when that happens and everything runs into our limbs to move our body, to exercise, to do things, like stress is okay sometimes, but we need to know how to put the brakes on, because we don't want to be there all the time. And breath is a beautiful way to put the brakes back on. And when we do that, I know they tell you you don't control your autonomic nervous system, but if you control your breath and you control your thoughts and you control your responses and your awareness and you become mindful of them, then yes, you are controlling all the autonomic systems. Because if you can put them back into this restful state, all of those other things that you want to do, you want to improve your immune system, you want to repair the damage done in your brain and all the inflammation, right? You want to digest, because lots of us with MS are going to have slow motility in our gut. And, another episode, but yeah, when we get leaky gut and slow motility, that causes retoxicity in the body. That's its own problem. So when we breathe and we slow it down and we activate our parasympathetic nervous system, we create the better digestion that we're looking for. So this is now taking us in. We'll move from the mental body into that wisdom body. And that is the ability to practice mindfulness. And so mindfulness in this case, like we'll talk about it in other contexts, but really just for the breath, I'm going to invite you back into just a reminder of some of the things we've already talked about. So one is the diaphragmatic breathing, breathing like a fish. and seeing how your breath is now. And also that how long can you hold your breath, not maximum hold, but just comfortable hold until you get that urge to swallow or breathe, right? And how often are you breathing in a minute? And see just over the day, just check in with your breath, and catch yourself if you feel like tense in your shoulders and just take a breath and just drop it. And I guess while we're getting into awareness, this might be a good point to become aware. And so I'm going to do a little breath practice with you. And this is a really quick, easy way to calm the nervous system. And so before I start, I'm just going to explain again that when we spend time exhaling, we slow our heart rate and we lower our blood pressure. When we inhale, we're increasing. So in a lot of breath patterns, it is beneficial to have an exhale longer than the inhale. But the one I'm going to do with you today is one that we do. Well, we're not necessarily trying to fall asleep right now. We're in the day or wherever you're watching this and you still want to pay attention. So I'm not going to try to put you to sleep with this one. This is just a quick way to really drop and to breathe lower in the body. So we'll do a few rounds of it. So what we're going to do, I'll explain first. So we're going to breathe in for a count of 5. We're going to hold for a count of 5. And then we're going to exhale for a hold of 5. And then we repeat that. And what pairs with it though is as we inhale, we're going to keep the tip of our tongue on the roof of our mouth, which closes the circuit of our governing channel and our central channel in the meridian system. So we're closing the energy loop. So we keep our tongue up while we inhale. The tongue stays connected as we hold, but as we exhale, we open the circuit and we let out stress. And when we do that and we have that exhale, I want you to think about not just dropping your tongue, but letting your jaw go and letting your shoulders. Everything is going, you're going to drop it all. Okay, so we're going to get ready. So here we go. We're going to inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I want you to now feel if you notice any different from where you started, even just in 3 simple rounds of that breath practice, of how quickly it can just change the entire way you feel, the tension in your body, the mood that you're in. And so this is how we become aware. This is how we move into our wisdom and our intuition and our insight. And what happens as we do that is we create that space and that relaxation and the mindfulness to allow the bliss body to emerge. So our bliss body is the innermost part of us. So this you can think of as spirit, source, the unified field, your soul. And this is the part of you, your higher self, the one that is the consciousness that came before the physical body, the little spark of life that animated when you became a fertilized egg and brought your blueprint and your beauty and your uniqueness into this physical form that you're living in right now. And so I think that there's no way that you can separate your bliss body from any of the other things we've talked about today, because it is what sparked life to begin with, and it leaves with you when the physical experience you're living right now is done. And so the breath is your spirit. And and when we think about all quieting our minds so we can have wisdom and we can tune in with our higher self, or what maybe is our real root cause, or what we need to shift in our life in order for healing to happen, for insights to come to us, for wisdom to be able to be discerned about, because you're your own healer. So for you to get all of those things, or even that the fact that you came to this video and you pressed play and you're still listening, or that you found this, or that you're looking for it? Where was the little voice that said to, to press this, or you needed this? That's what we're looking to get more of. And we find that when we think of what is inspirational, the word inspire comes from in spirit, spirit being like breath, like you're breathing into it. So inspiration is all about breath. And so again, we, even though we came from the physical body talking about the mitochondria and the bacteria creating ATP and CO2 and these very mechanical things, breath is also the spiritual experience, and it connects us to something that is beyond ourselves and is what our consciousness uses to create this body. So, I mean, we are jumping in at every layer, and we're seeing breath all of a sudden as this very divine, beautiful spiritual act. And so, you know what? I want you to use this as an invitation to invite more stillness and more breath awareness into your life. And I used to find, especially when I worked in a corporate job, that particularly like maybe once an hour after a difficult client or customer phone call, that I would always, roll my shoulders back, maybe drop down, and just take a couple breaths. Because when we get into anxiety loops like that, like our forebrain isn't really thinking clearly anymore. We don't make good decisions. We overreact because our nervous system is triggered. And so we feel overwhelmed by even small things. So every opportunity throughout your day that you can collect yourself and use your breath as an anchor. So, I mean, this is why in meditation, when I practiced meditation for the first time, it was through Zen Buddhist temple. And the Zen Buddhists, their meditation always starts with breathing on the exhale. And we would count up and exhale every breath. And we would count to 36. And if you lost your place, then you would start again without judgment, without just noticing what was your mind drifting to and coming back. And that breath count was an anchor into meditation, because it is very hard sometimes to just go from the monkey busy minds and these high anxiety lives we live to just meditate. It is a big leap for a lot of people, but using your breath is a very beautiful introductory tool that you can use to start already slowing down and coming back into yourself and quieting yourself. And not only are you using it as a meditative tool for your mind, but think about all the things we talked about on the physical and energetic level that you are benefiting yourself. And also then for this other beautiful benefit that you're making space for your wisdom and your bliss to shine through and to speak and communicate with you. So I just want to come back to just that this is free, it's easy, it's accessible. You don't need a guide, you don't need a teacher, you don't need a course. All you need is your intention, your motivation, and your willingness to be curious and to stick with it, because like all things, consistency is what makes the difference. You don't go to the gym and work out one time and then believe that you're going to be have a bikini body. We need to do these practices and we need to build them into our daily life. So I myself have, a ton of health hygiene habits I do consistently throughout my day. I would invite you to build this into your practice somehow. Now, whether this is you're going to use a long exhalation breathing pattern as you go to bed at night, or whether you're going to use this as check-ins during the day, even if you want to set an alarm and once an hour to just pay attention to your breath, or you want to do that maximum breath hold and how many breaths per minute every morning while you're lying in bed still. However you feel like you can incorporate this, it doesn't have to be long. Nobody is asking you to sit in lotus pose yet for 40 minutes at a time. This can literally be 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, one time a day, 10 times a day, whatever you have time for. But show up for yourself, come back to it again and again. Consistency, compassion, non-judgment, just allow it to happen. So if you found this useful or beneficial, I would like to just invite you to either join our Healing Circle. And Healing Circle you can find on my website, which is in the show notes below. And you just follow through to the Healing Circle. It meets on the second Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time of the month. And there we do energy healing, we do pranayama breath, we do sound healing, meditation. We talk about different like life and energetic topics, and it's just a place to come and to build community and to set up reminders to practice. And again, free. So you don't have to have any investment up front. You can just come and check it out. And if you want to already jump right all the way in and learn way more, my book is available on Amazon, also linked in the notes below. Unlearn Dis-Ease, Relearn Well-Being, and that's available Amazon and countries all over. And I want to just leave you with just a final intention, maybe placing a hand on your heart, one on your belly as we take one final breath together. Thank you for showing up for yourself today and for being curious and being committed to your own healing and to be open to new ideas. So continue to be curious, stay open. Remember that you are the love, you are the light. Have a blessed day and a blessed life, and I'll see you on the next exploration. Namaste. If this resonated, subscribe to Energy Over Matter for more energy medicine, nervous system regulation, and healing. You'll also find guided meditations and full episodes of Mind Over MS. Thanks for being here. Have a blessed day and a blessed life. Namaste.